We are doing a Dynasty startup mock draft. First 3 rounds into this video, we were putting out several videos, 3 rounds each, and we're just going to jump right into it. This is for a Dynasty startup superflex non-tight end premium mock draft. It's Dynasty startup season. I know a lot of you have kind of finished up your Dynasty rookie drafts, or maybe some of you are joining Dynasty for the first time, getting into your first league, and you have a startup coming up. This will help you. And we're just going to jump right into it, guys. Again, this is a Dynasty startup mock draft superflex non-tight end premium. And to start it off, there's 2 guys, and to me, there's only 2 guys that have you can make an argument to go first overall, and that is Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. And I will mute that sound so you don't have to hear that. Those are the first 2 guys. If you want to argue one over the other one, so be it. I'm not going to argue one. I'll sit there at the 102, and I'll be happy to take whatever one doesn't go at the 101. Both are studs. I think Josh Allen has a little bit more upside in terms of fantasy football. As we've seen, Josh Allen has finished, I think, QB1 more often than Patrick Mahomes, especially over the last several years. But you know what you're going to get with Mahomes, and you're going to get it for the next 10 years at least, right? Like, we're going to get another 10 years of Mahomes just being the best quarterback in the NFL. Josh Allen, there's a little bit of concern just because a lot of his production does come from rushing. And we saw it with Cam Newton. The guy, if you take a lot of hits, it wears you down no matter how big and strong you are. So still think Josh Allen, no complaints there if those are one of your 2 first starting quarterbacks. Next up, I will go CJ Stroud. He is the ADP QB3 right now. I actually think a couple other quarterbacks that I'm going to take next have a little bit more upside than CJ Stroud just because of their rushing ability. And you're going to hear me say this a lot when it comes to Dynasty and in this mock draft. Dynasty football is like playing the stock market a little bit. And you got to take in public perception a little bit as well. Like, what do other people think of this player? Everyone loves CJ Stroud. Everyone. You will not run into a person who will say a negative thing about CJ Stroud as of right now, where we're sitting on June 7th, 2024. And for that reason, the public perception, I think he's just a slightly more valuable asset in terms of a dynasty asset because of his age, because of the public perception of him, than the next 2 guys who I'm going to take back to back, and that is Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson. Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson. So those are, to me, the top 5 quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson, the reason I say they have more upside than CJ Stroud in terms of fantasy is just because of the rushing ability. Now, I think CJ Stroud can run the ball. We saw him do it a couple times in college in big-time games. But we didn't see it last year in terms of, is he going to run the ball? I think I think he had 150, 160 yards rushing. If that bumps up to 300 or 400 yards, then we're looking at, a stud. But if we're only going to get 150 to 200 yards rushing, that's not really going to make a difference. But these 2 players, Hurts, Lamar, if they're your QB1 in the Superflex League, you should be very, very happy. They could easily be the QB1 overall any given year. Now, next up, I know a lot of you are going to think, okay, when's the wide receiver run going to come? I personally still think that Joe Burrow should be taken in the top 6 here. I think it's easy to forget about Joe Burrow just because of what, he was hurt last year coming into the year. It took a while to get back, and then he got hurt again in the middle of the year. That being said, even with kind of that tough start to his season the first 4 weeks, you look at weeks 5 through 11 or 5 through 10, and then he got hurt. Joe Burrow was back to being Joe Burrow, right? He was the QB6 in total points. He was the QB4 in points per game weeks 5 to 10 when he started to really come back from, that calf injury that he had that was bothering him. Right? So Joe Burrow in 2022 was the QB4 overall and QB4 per game, right? QB8 in 2021, QB10 in points per game. Joe Burrow has Jamar Chase, has T. Higgins. He should still be going, in my opinion, in the top 6. And if you want to argue him over Lamar Jackson, I wouldn't argue too much. Now it comes to that time where I'm probably going to be taking Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, and depending on how you feel, if Jamar Chase is in that same tier, then Jamar Chase. I don't mind it playing out this way. First 6 picks as quarterbacks, 7, 8, 9 as the receivers. I don't mind it. To me, those 3 receivers are in a tier of their own. Tier 1. You can kind of make an argument for one over the other one. Justin Jefferson's had the best start to a career that any receiver has ever had his first 4 years. CeeDee Lamb just had the best season out of that any of the 3 guys have produced. CeeDee Lamb has had the best season last year, one of the best receiving seasons we've ever seen. And then Jamar Chase has probably he does have the best quarterback in the most stable position over the next 3, 4, 5 years. So there's kind of arguments for all 3 to be wide receiver number 1. I'm not going to argue too much for one of the other one. Take who you like the most. And next up, we have, to me, it's 2 guys in the next tier, and that's Caleb Williams and Anthony Richardson. I'm going to take those 2 players over, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's the next non-quarterback on my list. I'm going to take those 2 players. Yeah, I will take those 2 players. I'm happy with that. Caleb Williams versus Anthony Richardson is kind of like the Mahomes versus Josh Allen debate, kind of. Now, we don't know just how much of it, in terms of passing the football, Anthony Richardson, how good he's going to be. But in terms of do you want consistency or do you want upside? Caleb Williams is probably going to be much more consistent than Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson, if I had to put money on it, is going to have, in the next 5 years, is going to have more QB1 finishes than Caleb Williams. That's just my if I had to put money on it type of thing, right? So those guys are off the board. I think that's kind of how the first 11 picks of a Dynasty startup draft should start. Now, you're sitting there at the 112 and you have the luxury of having back-to-back picks. I'm definitely, one of those picks is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown for me. He is very close to being in that tier 1, in my opinion. Some people are going to argue that he should be, and I'm not going to argue too much against him. PPR, we're talking about the guy, since he's come into the league, has been an absolute stud. Wide receiver 7 in 2022 in total points per game. Last year, wide receiver 3, and a 1 of 5 wide receivers last year to average 20 or more points in full PPR. And if you look at his game log, and there's value in this, in my opinion. If you look at his game log, Amon-Ra St. Brown had 1 bad game. He had 1 bad game in PPR or in any format, really. He had 1 bad game. Week 14, he had 5.1 points. Every other game that season, besides the game he missed, of course, every other game that he played in, he had, I'm just quickly looking at it, 14 or more PPR points and basically over 15 points almost every week. Sorry, he had a 12.9 week. But anyways, the point is he almost never busts. The guy is almost unstoppable. He is the Lions offense. He's much harder to just completely shut down, in my opinion, than a guy like Jamar Chase. Now, Jamar Chase has a bigger impact maybe on a game, more dangerous. But in terms of who is more likely to have 2 catches for 20 yards, I think it's Jamar Chase over Amon-Ra St. Brown. So there's an argument to be made. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown gives you the consistency. Jamar Chase has those boom games. But if I'm sitting there at the 112, I get Amon-Ra St. Brown. And to me, I'm going to take a quarterback. And I'm going to lean Justin Herbert over Jordan Love. Now, again, if you feel like you want Jordan Love over Justin Herbert, they're kind of in the same tier for me. I think it's a little bit exaggerated on how much the Chargers are going to throw or run the ball in next season. They're still going to throw the ball. They will. And honestly, it could be better for Justin Herbert. Is he going to throw for 5,000 yards? No. He's not going to have 600, 700 pass attempts. But could he throw for 35 touchdowns? Of course. When they get down to that red zone, they're not just going to run the ball. And a touchdown, if you play in 4-point, is worth 100 passing yards. If you play in 6-point, it's worth 150 passing yards. Give me touchdowns over yards any day of the week. I'll take I'll take 37 touchdowns and 4,000 yards over, 25 touchdowns and 5,000 yards any day of the week. So, and I think they'll run the ball a little bit more with Justin Herbert. Now, and the reason why I said you got to take a quarterback here, I don't want to leave the first 2 rounds of a superflex league without a quarterback, without at least one quarterback. It's going to happen most likely to a couple teams because of just how the board falls. But I don't want to do that at all. I really don't. So now you look at it here, and I think what I would do if I were one of these 2 teams, I'm sitting here, I'm looking at it. I'm probably going to go a receiver here. I don't mind Jordan Love either here as well, but I'll take Puka Nacua at the 202. I think it's interesting, the debate between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Puka Nacua. And honestly, I don't think there's a wrong answer. Like, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be very, very good. But if he has a Puka Nacua season, like, we are going to be shocked, right? If we have, not shocked, but like, best case scenario is that he has a Puka Nacua season, like a record-breaking season. The argument for Marvin Harrison over Nacua, so the argument for Nacua over Marvin Harrison is, all right, we've seen it. The guy just had a 1,400-yard season and broke rookie records. The argument for Harrison over Nacua is that the stock is not as volatile, in my opinion. If Marvin Harrison has a Justin Jefferson, a Jamar Chase, a Puka Nacua type season, he's going to be in this tier 1 of receivers. Puka Nacua just did that, and he's not in that tier 1, right? Because of his draft capital, we kind of want to see it one more time from Puka. If Marvin Harrison Jr. does that, he could be wide receiver overall number 1. That's the argument for Marvin Harrison Jr. over Puka Nacua. Now, if I'm sitting here and I'm team 10, I'm either going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. or I'm going to take the quarterback. I'm going to go with Jordan Love here. I am totally fine starting my Superflex Dynasty leagues with back-to-back quarterbacks. I got 2 young guys. We saw what Jordan Love was capable of last year. I don't necessarily think Jordan Love can be like QB1, but he's going to be a top 10 quarterback most likely. He's going to average 18 to 20 points. Maybe he'll have a couple seasons of like 21 points. Caleb Williams, next year as a rookie, he's going to be a rookie. We have to temper expectations a little bit, but he's going to get to that level of like potentially putting up 22, 23 plus points, which is kind of elite level quarterbacks, in my opinion. So now you look at these 3 teams here, and all 3 of them really, really want a quarterback. And for that reason, and this is a guy that I think is being a little bit slept on, I'm going to go quarterback for the next team, Jamar Chase's team, and that's Kyler Murray. That is Kyler Murray. And the reason why I would take Kyler Murray here, his ADP right now is actually the 209, 208, 209, so kind of the mid to late second round. And I think that's a little bit crazy. I think if you can get Kyler Murray as your QB2 or QB1 even after you take one of the top 3 receivers, you should be extremely happy. Kyler Murray, I don't think a lot of people realize this, but Kyler Murray last year was the QB9 in points per game. The QB9, and that's missing the first 9 weeks. Points per game. He missed the first 9 weeks. He missed the last, 6-7 weeks of 2022. Came off an ACL injury, stepped into a new offense, and put up top 10 quarterback numbers. His first 3 weeks, 18.3, 22.7, 20.4. Like, that's pretty amazing. Every year, essentially, Kyler Murray has been a top 10 quarterback, and he's had several years of being, like a top 5 guy, right? I mean, you just look at 2021, he was QB4 in points per game. 2020, he was QB3 in points per game. Like Kyler Murray, and then last year he was QB9. The dude is going to put up a top 10 season. He runs the ball. He averages about 35, 37 yards rushing per game. And even last year, coming off the ACL injury, he still averaged over 30 yards rushing per game. The dude just got Marvin Harrison Jr. He has Trey McBride, Michael Wilson, Zay Jones, James Conner, Trey Benson. This offense is going to be really good, in my opinion, kind of underrated. And Kyler Murray is going to be the focal point of that offense. So now if you're sitting there as team 7 or team 8, you're a little upset, and you're probably going to go the route of, well, I don't want to reach on a quarterback. And I will say this, guys, I want to leave my superflex dynasty leagues in the first 2 rounds with a quarterback. I also don't want to reach when there's stud players there, absolute studs there. And I'm talking about, Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm not going to reach and take a Trevor Lawrence or a Brock Purdy in the 205 when Marvin Harrison Jr. is sitting there. I'm just not. So it sucks to not have a quarterback, but that's why I'm a little bit nervous picking in the 7, 8, 9 range, because you probably should take one of these receivers here. But when it comes back to you, as you can see, if Love and Kyler go, you're going to be kind of screwed, right, in terms of not having a quarterback in the first 2 rounds. Now, there's still some good quarterbacks you can get in round 3, and you're going to hope it kind of falls to you that way, right? But I'm not going to reach for one here. I'm just not. Next up on the list, I'm fine with the first running back here. I know he's fallen a little bit more. Bijan Robinson, his ADP is actually the 202. I would still, all these guys, I would take over Bijan Robinson from Marvin Harrison Jr., Kyler Murray, Jordan Love, just because the running back position is very volatile. It changes so much from year to year, whereas the wide receiver position is much more of a stable asset. And again, you got to approach this like it's the stock market. So if Bijan Robinson, tears his ACL in year 2, his value is going to kind of plummet. If that happens to Marvin Harrison Jr., his value is it's going to fall a bit, but it's not going to fall a whole lot, right? It's going to fall a lot more for Bijan Robinson. But I will say this, there are only a few running backs that I would be okay taking at value. Bijan's one of them, Breece Hall and Jahmyr Gibbs. Those are the 3 that I'm okay with taking at value, and maybe Jonathan Taylor. Those 3, though, for sure, I'm okay with taking at value. All the other running backs, if I'm not getting value on them, I'm not going to take them. I'm not going to take them where their ADP is because it's way too volatile. And the biggest mistake dynasty players make is looking beyond the coming season for most running backs. There's only Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, maybe McCaffrey now. Like, those 5 guys are probably the only 5 that I really look beyond 2024 and say, okay, I have a really good asset for the next 2-3 years. That's it. All those other guys, I'm looking year to year. And it's a big, big mistake dynasty players make. Next up on the list, you're going into the teams that already have their quarterbacks. I still don't think there's a quarterback here that I would necessarily take. I'm fine with taking... Man, this is tough. I'm going to go with this team. I'm going to go A.J. Brown next. A.J. Brown and Garrett Wilson, to me, are kind of in another tier of their own in terms of dynasty value. Kind of pick who you like the most. I've always been an A.J. Brown fan. He just got that contract that's going to lock him up for another several years, I believe, on the Eagles. He's still only, he'll be 27 at the end of this month. He just put up, I believe, back-to-back 1,400-yard seasons. I know there's a little bit of a sour taste in our mouth because of how it ended with the Eagles last year, but, just look at the numbers, man. Like, A.J. Brown is coming off back-to-back 1,400-yard seasons. He caught 100 passes last year. He caught 11 touchdowns in 2022. The dude's a stud, and we can't forget that. And I think it's going to be better in Philadelphia for them. We are getting to the point where I don't mind taking a QB2 if you're kind of close to the turn. You sometimes you got to reach a little bit, but I still think I would go either Breece Hall or Garrett Wilson here. I'll just go Garrett Wilson and then I'll go Breece Hall. Those 3 players, honestly, A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson, and Breece Hall, are all kind of in a tier together. And again, kind of pick who you want to pick, like who you like more. Breece Hall is going to potentially be RB1 this year. Garrett Wilson, we're all expecting a huge, huge outbreak. Now, the one thing I will say about Garrett Wilson is if he doesn't meet our expectations this year, we're going to see his value fall because now we're talking about 3 years now of course, we're blaming it on the quarterback, but how much of Garrett Wilson's value is Aaron Rodgers? And there is a decent percentage of his value is because of Aaron Rodgers. Whereas, AJ Brown, honestly, like, he's good enough to know, like, even if he gets an average quarterback like a Ryan Tannehill, he's still going to be a stud. So that's kind of the argument there. Now, you're looking at these three teams that are very close to the turn. Sometimes you got to reach just a little bit to get the guy you want because you're so close to the turn. And I'm okay with doing that if you decide to reach a little bit. I'm okay with doing that. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to reach and I'm going to take the rookie Jaden Daniels. I'm going to pair CJ Stroud and Jaden Daniels together. And I think I have two of the top 10-ish quarterbacks to go. Two of the top 10 or so quarterbacks in the NFL for the next five years or so. That's how I'm perceiving my draft, to how it started. Jaden Daniels, to me, the rushing floor, he's going to potentially, out of all the rookie quarterbacks, he's going to have the best season. I'd put my money on him having the best season, and I would take Jaden Daniels over Trevor Lawrence because of that rushing floor. And honestly, we just haven't seen it from Trevor Lawrence. He's a good quarterback. I don't know if he can be great for fantasy as well. What do I want to do with these next teams? I know a lot of you are thinking, why the hell hasn't Christian McCaffrey gone? I'm actually going to take Jahmyr Gibbs here. He's going to be my next guy. He's in that Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson territory of, like, I think I have a good asset for the next 2-3 years. And those are very, very rare at the running back position. And, I'll take it because I still feel confident. I don't feel super confident that Gibbs is going to make it back, after team one, and I'll still take, kind of the leftovers is what's there. Now team one has a decision to make. In my opinion, they have a decision to make. I think they feel comfortable. If you have Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, you feel very comfortable in terms of, all right, I have my QB1 and he's so good that I can maybe take my QB2 a little bit later. And you kind of have the decision right here. It's like, man, I can go Christian McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill and just, like, dominate this league. And you know what? I think that's what I'm going to do. And I think it's a mistake that a lot of people sometimes make, is not putting a lot of value in, hey, if you win year one, if you play for money and you win year one, most likely you're going to pay for, like, the next 5 years of buy-ins, right? Let's say it's a $20 league, right? You have 12 teams, so $240. And let's just say the first place winner gets 150 or whatever the number is, even if it's just 100, right? The first place player gets $100. Well, you just paid for 4 or 5 years of your buy-in, right? Including this current year. Yeah. Like, think of it that way as well. So sometimes it's good to push in, and these are still valuable assets, I think, for multiple years in McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill. And if something goes wrong, those guys are going to be very easy to trade. Very, very easy to trade. So now if I'm looking at team two, I really want to take a wide receiver. If I'm team two, I don't want to leave the first 3 rounds without getting a wide receiver. So I'm going to go ahead and take Malik Neighbors here. I'm really happy with that. That's kind of right around where his ADP is going. I don't think Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. are that far off, to be honest, in terms of their fantasy ability. I really don't think they're that far off. And so I'm happy with taking Malik Neighbors there as my wide receiver one to build around. Now moving along, team three, definitely don't need a quarterback here. I am looking at the running backs. I don't necessarily want to take a running back right now. I want to get a receiver, I think, and I'm going to go ahead and grab that receiver. I'm going to grab Drake London. Again, I prioritize receivers over running backs in Dynasty. They're just a lot more stable assets. And running backs are the easiest to find off the waiver wire in terms of backups, and the easiest to trade for as well. So that's why I want to build around wide receivers. I'll worry about my running back room in October. Right now, I want to build around my receivers. That's how I want to play. Team four here, you're kind of in an interesting spot. I don't think I could let Trevor Lawrence go too much further. At the 304, and I think that's right where his ADP is as well. And I'm going to pair him up as my QB2, and I'm feeling pretty happy there. I still think Trevor Lawrence has upside. Is he going to be the generational talent that we all thought he was going to be? No, but can he just be a solid like top 12 low end QB1 year in and year out? Yes, I do think he can still be that. I still think he can be that. Now we're looking at Team 5 here. And I'm going to take another receiver. If I'm Team 5, I'm going to take Chris Olave. I know a lot of you are thinking, what about Sam Laporta? In non-tight end premium leagues, I drop tight ends a little bit. I do. I drop them just a bit. So, Laporta's awesome. He's going to be awesome. To me, there's multiple tight ends that could make the case for tight end 1. Laporta should be tight end 1, but I wouldn't be surprised if Trey McBride is tight end 1 next year. I wouldn't be surprised if Kelsey's tight end 1 next year. I wouldn't be surprised if Mark Andrews is tight end 1 next year. Even Dalton Kincaid has an outside shot. So, I don't want to reach too much on a Laporta. I want to get some value there. And now what we're looking at here, I know I'm in an interesting spot here for sure. I look at the wide receivers, and I like Ayuk and Waddle. I do think it's a little bit of a reach. What I'm going to do actually is, what would I do? What would I do? Let's see my team. I got Burrow and AJ Brown. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to lock up my QB2 in Dak Prescott. I value quarterbacks way too much in superflex leagues. Dak Prescott is the 309 at ADP. I'm taking him at the 306, so not too much of a reach. But I value Dak more than Brock Purdy. I think it's a little ridiculous that go look at Dak's numbers since 2020. Either in the seasons that he's finished healthy, he finishes as a top 5 quarterback in points per game, in total points and points per game. You look at last year, Dak Prescott was QB3 in total points, QB5 in points per game. Right? Dak Prescott in 2022, he was in total point. Well, you gotta look at from when he got hurt in week 1 and missed, didn't play until week 7. You look at from week 7 when he came back onwards, Dak Prescott was QB6 in total points, QB9 in points per game. Right? 2021, Dak Prescott, QB7 in total points, QB9 in points per game. 2020, Dak Prescott was QB1 in total points per game, and then he got hurt. So Dak Prescott is severely underrated. He's still only 30, 31 years old. Super happy with him here. And if I'm Team 7, I'm glad that either Lawrence, Dak, or Purdy came back to me, and I'm running to the board, and I'm taking Brock Purdy. I hate leaving my first 2 rounds without a quarterback. I really don't want to leave. I hate leaving the first 3 rounds without a quarterback. So I'm taking Brock Purdy here. And I'm happy, very, very happy with that. Now Team 8's in a little bit of a situation here. I think how you play this, if this happens to you, you just, unfortunately, I don't want to reach, on Tua and Jared Goff. Those guys to me are kind of 4th round picks. I don't want to reach on those guys. I feel fairly confident that one of them is going to make it back. We'll see. But I'm going to go ahead and take the value of Sam Laporta here, who is at the 212 according to ADP, and he falls to me at the 308. Again, that's how I would do it personally. This is where I start thinking about Laporta, just because it is a non-tight end premium. But now I hope my difference making at the tight end position makes up for maybe my lack of quarterback play just a little bit. At the 309 here, I am thinking about Jonathan Taylor because he is starting to become a value. I got a stud receiver and I got Kyler Murray. I don't want to take a quarterback here yet. I'm actually going to lean. Again, these 2 guys are kind of in the same. It's kind of the next 3 guys are in a tier for me. I'm going to go Brandon Ayuk next. I'll go Brandon Ayuk for San Francisco. And yeah, I mean, he's him as my wide receiver too. I'm super happy with. Um, you know, I think the 49ers are going to work something out and sign him long term. I think they're going to prioritize him over Debo, and that's the offense I want to be on. So, and then the 310, I will take a receiver because I really need a receiver after taking 2 quarterbacks. The tiebreaker for Dunze over Waddle is I have Caleb Williams. That's the tiebreaker. I have Caleb Williams. I'm going to stack those 2 players together at least for the next 5 years. Now we're at the 11 211, and honestly, I think he's fallen too far. I got really good value on him at the 311. Excuse me, Jonathan Taylor. His ADP is the 305, so I get almost a half a round value on him. That's kind of what I want to look at with running backs. As we get lower down the list, I want bigger values. You know, I want full round and a half values. I still think Jonathan Taylor is in that group of, all right, I know where he's going to be the next 2 years, and I think he's going to be a top 7 guy if healthy. And I'll lock that up at the 311 here. And then at the 312, I'm going to take Jalen Waddle. Super happy if I'm team 12 to get Jalen Waddle at the 312. He's one of my favorite picks in Dynasty startups. His ADP is actually the 401. So you're getting him right around where his ADP is. I think that's really good value. Jalen Waddle, like, there's not many players that have had the start to their career that Jalen Waddle has. Like, there's like 10 guys, I think, and they're essentially all Hall of Famers except for like Jarvis Landry. So Jalen Waddle, to me, still underrated what he did last year. 72 catches, 1,000 yards, and 4 touchdowns, being hurt like every single game. So I think he could have a really big bounce back year here. So there you have it, guys. That's my first 3 rounds of a Dynasty startup draft. Make sure to like and subscribe. I will be back with rounds 4 through 6. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments, and catch you guys on the next video.